Welcome to The Kingdom, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics and a land defended by Sir Ross's Knights. Now here's your host, Rocco Geppi.
Hello Knights Nation, I'm your host Rocco Geppi, and welcome back to The Kingdom Podcast. We have a nice show planned this week, including a couple of guests with ties to the Kingdom. But first, let's get off and running with cross country. Knights cross country teams participated last week in the Dickinson Long and Short Invitational. It was last Saturday at Big Spring High School, hosted by none other than Dickinson College. The Essex women's team had two runners, and one participating in each the 6K long race and the 4K short race on the women's side. In the 6K, Madison Magaha out of Patapsco High School, she finished with a time of 30 minutes 12 seconds. And she continues to put up respectable times, improving week to week. Natalia Johnson of Sparrows Point finished running a 22:23 in the 4K, and this was just Johnson's second race of the season, having run a 28:01 in the 5K 2 weeks ago. The men's long event consisted of an 8K, which had four runners from Essex. Braden Berkey out of Lochraven High School continues to pace the Knights runners as he once again turned in the best time for Essex, finishing 67th out of 141 runners with a time of 30 minutes 46 seconds. Sam Smith, Patrick Bennett, and Isaiah Hawley all finishing within minutes of one another. I want to focus a little bit on Bennett. He had a huge day personally, dropping over 1 minute from his 8K best time. And also a shout out to Hawley. Hawley turned in a good day as well, shaving 40 seconds off his 8K personal record. A quote here after talking to Noah Hutton, the head coach of the Knights cross-country teams. He said, quote, "We wanted to use this meet as training. The Dickinson course was much hillier than the last meet at Lebanon Valley College. The goal was to get another 8K in for practice and mental strength prior to running personal bests and allow the sprinters and mid-distance runners a chance to shine in the 4K. Knights Cross Country will look to attack their personal bests on Saturday, October 2nd, as they travel to Salisbury University to compete in the Don Cathcart Invitational, which is scheduled to get started at 2 p.m. We turn now to women's soccer, as the Knights squad had not played a game in 10 days before heading to La Plata, Maryland to take on the College of Southern Maryland on Tuesday, September 28th. The Knights found themselves in a fight in that game after getting the first goal in the 10th minute of play. Patricia Riviera from Zeta Holloway, and that will not be the last time you hear Holloway's name. That goal scored at 9:46 put the Knights on the board first. The Knights' Kara Dietrich scores another goal at the 11th minute to put the Knights up 2-0, and then Holloway, she scores at 14 minutes exactly to give the Knights what you would think would be a comfortable 3-goal lead. The Hawks battled back in the 21st minute, Amber Harris scoring to get the Hawks on the board, and then in the 40th minute of play, right before halftime, Janelle Reyes from Alexandra Baker to bring the Hawks within one. We would go all the way to the 83rd minute of play, and that's when Baker knocked home the tying goal to send this one into overtime. In overtime, though, it was Holloway who booted home the game winner at 95-35 to give the Knights their 6th win of the season. The Knights moved to 6-2 overall this year. And in this game, the Knights, it was really a tale of two halves. The Knights, in my opinion, just a pretty courageous game because of injuries, playing with only 10 young ladies on the field. The Hawks having 11 on the field for this match. And I know it's only one more person, but as you can see, in a game like that, no lead is safe as the Knights jumped out to a 3-goal lead, only to give up 3 more and have to win it in overtime. Shots taken in the first half, the Knights outshot the Hawks 8-4. In the second half, it was the Hawks 6-1, and the Knights actually outshot in this game 10-9 overall. Between the pipes on the Knights side, Sydney Baker finishing the game with 6 saves on 9 shots on goal. And the goalie across the field, Ashley Cox, she finished with 5 saves with 9 shots on goal as well. Corner kicks, the Knights had the huge margin in corner kicks, 7-1. And the fouls in the game, Southern Maryland fouling more, 7-4. For the Knights, again, just a good game. It had been a week and a half since they played, 10 people on the field. You can't argue with the result, so hopefully we'll be able to put a good amount of energy and get some of those student athletes healthy for their next game, which they'll have another pretty big break after a cancellation in beginning of October. They will not play again until October 7th, when they will stay on the road heading to Anne Arundel Community College. That one is scheduled for a 6 p.m. kickoff. And then the Knights will return home for their last two regular season matchups, October 12th at 5 p.m. against Montgomery College, and on the 14th at 5 p.m. against Hagerstown. On the men's side of the pitch, the last time we spoke, the Knights were preparing to take on their sibling campus in CCBC Catonsville. That was the Hall of Fame game this year, as CCBC Catonsville's 2007 women's soccer team was enshrined into the CCBC Athletics Hall of Fame. And unfortunately for the Cardinals, that may have been the best part of their afternoon, as the Knights really took control of that game and did not look back, winning on a final score of 7-0. Now, to the credit of the Cardinals, the first half of that game was very tightly contested as it went into the locker room. Well, not to the locker room, as we're not using the locker rooms right now, but they went into the break with the Knights up just 1-0. I say 1-0 because in that first half, the Knights getting off 10 shots as opposed to just 4 from the Cardinals, and only able to send home one of those, which came in the 16th minute off the foot of Kazuma Ishizuka. The Knights 1-0 lead at halftime, and then really the Cardinals did a good job of keeping the Knights' attack off the board for quite some time. The next goal scored in the 62nd minute by Sam Diaz on an assist from Michael Adekambe. And then it, unfortunately, a few moments after that was all downhill for the Cardinals as the Knights poured it on in the second half. 6 second half goals scored. Goal again by Kazuma Ishizuka. Henry Ortiz. Akanabe got into the action from the scoring side. Ivan Osemabor got on the scoreboard, with the scoring being capped at 89-13 by Noah Cabri. The Knights running away with this one by a final of 7-0. The Knights then also were in La Plata on Tuesday, the 28th of September, taking on the College of Southern Maryland, and this one just the opposite, as the Knights did the majority of their attacking in the first half, winning the game by a final of 9-0. The Knights getting 7 first half goals. Scoring started in the 10th minute of play by Andy Portillo, and then goals by Katsuma, Diaz, Adekambe, and Dennis Benegas Torres in the first half, as well as Ishizuka and Kota Tuchizawa. All those goals in the first half of play. Goals in the second half scored by Osemabor and Liam Wilson. The Knights taking the majority of their shots and scoring opportunities in the first half. Again, winning this one by a score of 9-0, and that puts the Knights on the season at 8-1. The Knights' next game is coming up on Thursday, September 30th, and that is going to be on the road against Prince George's Community College. But we're going to hold off on information on that game because we have got to hit our first break. It's a 15-second break, and then coming up out of this break, we're going to have some more information on that Prince George's game as my two guests join me, again, with ties to the Kingdom. So stick around, find out who's going to be on the show and what their connection to the Kingdom is as you continue to listen to the Kingdom Podcast, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics.
Let's talk about college. Times have changed, and I say no to an education at the cost of crippling debt, because paying off student loans for the next 30 years is not in my financial plans.
Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online and see what you can be.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. And now it's time to go behind enemy lines, if you will, as men's soccer prepares for its upcoming match with Prince George's Community College. We welcome in two owls that know a thing or two about the Kingdom. Joining me now, Prince George's Sports Information Specialist, Taylor Moore, and Supervisor of Intercollegiate Athletic Operations, Delilah Glidden. Taylor, Delilah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Rocco. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right. So before we get into the questions, let us know a little bit about what you're responsible for at Prince George's Community College. Ladies first, we'll start with you, Delilah.
So as Supervisor of Intercollegiate Athletic Operations, the simplified way of saying it is I'm kind of like the AD's assistant. So I handle the scheduling, the budgeting, where we're going to use our money, how we're going to use our money, how much we've got left. Rearranging any games that need rescheduling. I also handle all of the inventory. So anything that we do bring in, I'm responsible for counting it, making sure we have it all, making sure it goes to the right places, all of that. So day-to-day kind of operations, and then also the game day operations, setting everything up, taking everything down, handling any sort of ejections. I'll do any jobs that need filling in. So if Taylor needs help with any of the scoreboard or stats, I'm there. Otherwise, I get to just kind of supervise and make sure everything's running smoothly.
Man, Taylor, what's left over for you?
That's about it. She wrapped it up. I kind of follow more under, I think, your title as well, sports information specialist. My primary responsibilities day to day, I do a lot of social media, website, promotional events on campus, whether that's physical events in person or posters, other marketing materials for not just our student athletes, but the general student population. And as far as game day, it's behind the scenes stuff such as game day programs, streaming, photos, live stats. So whether that's me doing live stats myself or photos myself, or, kind of delegating to any student workers. We've kind of gotten under this semester, getting some federal work study students in here, kind of training them, sort of what you had us doing as former interns. But that's a little bit of day-to-day stuff. It's a lot of game day action, and then throughout the week, just preparing for that game day itself.
Taylor, giving away a little bit of the surprise there, which we will get to later on in the episode. I appreciate both of your answers. Let's talk a little bit about this match we have coming up on Thursday, September 30th. The number 3 ranked Knights men's soccer team travel to Largo and will take on your 2-4 Owls. PG season didn't quite get started how you guys would want, but they have won 2 in a row, outscoring their opponents during that time 17-1. Miguel Rosales Romero, he leads the team with 10 goals, followed by, I'm going to do my best, Victor Aluwa-Falibumi with 5. First, tell me how close I was. And then second, what can we expect from this Owls offense?
Yeah, you're pretty close. I won't say you're 100%. I just chop it off, and I've asked him. It's okay with him. I just call him Victor O. So I don't try to butcher it like you did, but you did pretty well. So yeah, you hit on it. We haven't started the season off as we would have liked. Going back a little bit, we weren't fortunate enough to have a spring season like I know that you all were when you made that run into the national championship. And we've also had a coaching change just before the fall season. So with that turnover, recruiting was a little bit, I'll say behind, not where we're typically used to. But going ahead and looking forward, we have won our past 2, like you said. We're up 17-1 in the past 2 games. We just beat Chesapeake College last night, 6-0. So that's nice to get a blank slate for a change. But yeah, it should be a good game. It'll be a challenge, and we'll see what our team's made of.
Delilah, I know you're on the operations side of things, but I do know you. I know you know a little thing or two about sports. What is your take on this team so far this year?
I think as the season has progressed, it's been easy to see that they're kind of getting into the groove of things with Cedric as the new head coach and with the team all working together. There's a lot of newcomers. I don't know really how many returners we had. Taylor would know those numbers. But they're communicating better. They're working better together. You can tell that their conditioning is paying off. So That first game was tough for us because it was our first game of the season.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't had that much practice because we kind of had that late start. But you can definitely see it starting to affect them in a positive way, that they've had these games, they've had consistent conditioning and practice. I think they definitely are looking better.
Excellent. Now we're going to shift to the other side of the field. Another positive, if I look at it this way, even though the defense has given up 22 goals in 6 games, the flip side of that is they've been keeping your starting goalkeeper very busy. Axel Vargas. He comes into this one averaging 6.5 saves per game. I know a lot of that is that he's facing a lot of shots every game, and he has a 64% save rate. In your opinion, we'll start with you, Taylor. What can your defense do against the Knights to lessen the amount of pressure that it puts on Vargas?
Yeah, that's a tough question given your guys' offense and your 8-1 record. Like I said, you guys coming off that national championship run. But one of our, and Delilah alluded to it a little bit, one of our 2 returners, other than Miguel Rosales, who is leading the team with our goals, is sophomore Franklin Urrutia, and he's back there. He kind of is the anchor for our defense. As a sophomore, he was here in 2019 when we had a fairly successful team that made a bit of a run as well. So we've leaned on him a good bit, as our other freshmen on the outsides have kind of been taken under his wing and figured out how to gel as a team and communicate with Axel. He certainly has been put to work so far this semester, but at the same time, that's good practice, good repetitions. I'm sure he expects to face a lot of shots against Essex, and here's hoping, rattling off 2 in a row that we can make it 3.
Yeah, I don't hope the same, but I like your spirit. Delilah, the next question will start with you. In your opinion, what do the Owls have to do to walk away with a win on Thursday?
I think the big thing is just communicate. I think they've gotten better. We can hear them on the sidelines talking to each other more, figuring stuff out. Towards the beginning of the season, there wasn't much communication that we heard, or at least that I could hear. So I think they just need to keep that up and figure out how they're going to need to work together.
Taylor, same question. What do you think has to happen for the Owls to pull the upset?
I think we need to jump out quick and strong. We know how good your offense is, so we can't play from behind. Just jumping out early, moving the ball well, not getting a kicking match as it can happen in soccer so often. So to really settle down, like Delilah said, use communication, take the easy passes sometimes, work the ball forward, and try to keep that pressure off our defense while getting some chances on offense.
All right. Well, thank you both for your insight. Again, folks, that game coming up Thursday, September 30th, with kickoff scheduled for 5 p.m. Keep your eyes on the Owls Twitter account at PGCC Owls for the game day live stream and live stat links. We will also be retweeting and sharing that information on our social media, whether it's Twitter or Instagram at CCBC Essex Sports. Okay, so a little bit of a spoiler earlier by Mr. Moore, but we're gonna plug on anyway and talk about how the 2 of you are connected to the Kingdom. Knights Nation, both of my guests today were former athletic operations interns for Knights Athletics. Delilah, we're going to start with you. You were an intern the fall of 2018, and then some paperwork aside, pretty much immediately after the internship, you came on board as a part-time athletic specialist. Talk about your time at CCBC Essex, the internship, and what you learned here that you were able to take and go use at Prince George's.
Well, you were half right about the internship, because if you remember, I applied for both the athletic operations and the equipment room. Because I didn't know really which one I should do. I didn't know which I was more interested in. And you called me and asked, hey, you applied for both of these. Which one do you want, or do you want to kind of do both? And so I said both. So I think I was in the equipment room a lot more than the other interns. I did a lot more of that side of it with helping out the equipment room, which in turn related to what I ended up doing as an athletic specialist.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say pretty much everything there helped me with what I'm doing now, from the internship to the part-time job. Because as an intern, I knew nothing about soccer. And I think the first day I ran balls for 8 hours. And then the next week, I learned how to do the live stats. And then it became the easiest thing in the world to do soccer live stats. I learned the stats of lacrosse, basketball, baseball, and none of those I had known before. I liked sports. I didn't know how to do any of that. I didn't know stats for any kind of sport. So that
we won't get into the conversation about basketball stats. I don't think any of us want to remember those couple of nights.
No, not a fan of basketball stats. Like watching basketball. I'm happy that I can mainly supervise now. Happy that I'm not expected to do the stats. Glad that that's on Taylor.
Yeah, one of the things that you also alluded to was the ball running for all those hours. And Taylor, we'll get to your time here in just a second, but he definitely did not have to deal with the kickoff classic, which was basically what felt like 27 hours, 18 games all over a weekend. That I think we will hopefully get back to that opening weekend next fall. But you definitely came along in a semester where there was a lot going on.
Yeah, it was also a hot semester because it was about 90 degrees that day and no shade. But yeah, so, and then as an athletic specialist, I did work more in the equipment room. That was more with the inventory, with the athletes, and setting up the games, which is also something that I didn't exactly have to do as an intern. I did it more when I was part-time, and that definitely helps me with what I'm doing now, because that's a big part of my job, is making sure everything is set up correctly. We've got officials, everything's running smoothly, everything's connected for my side, for Taylor's side. You know, he's got his speakers, he's got all the right cords. I think pretty much everything like just led into what I'm doing now. And it's wild that it just consecutively moved that way in terms of specialists, and now I'm here because I think everything compounded on top of each other.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Taylor, you did your internship a few months later, so the two of you actually had some time to work together here at Essex as well. Let us know what you learned during your time in the Kingdom, how it prepared you for the world of college athletics.
Yeah, so like Delilah, I didn't have a lot of hands-on experience in the background of really athletics at all. I always played team sports growing up, so I was around it, but I wasn't, in that administration part and that administration aspect. So understanding just week to week what goes into fielding for a game, and I did help with setup and breakdown, things like that. But a lot of it was the sports information aspect, where that was creating game notes for Aaron. I know that he still does some play calls for you guys, whether it was website stuff such as photos or, articles, working on them with you. Obviously I had to go by Rocco before it was official, but seeing what it took to put it together and make it all happen, really was a good introduction. And although I wasn't there for that soccer weekend, I don't know if you remember, it was the final Maryland JUCO basketball tournament was one of the first few weeks of the internship. So that was certainly a lot as well. That was out in Hagerstown. So
yeah,
we weren't running balls for 8 hours, but we were there for, it seemed like about 12 hours of each day, 3 days in a row. So
yeah, it was about the same time. It was, I think it was 4 games a day, 4 days. Well, not 4 games a day for 4 days. The first 2 days, there were 4 games. But yeah, equally as busy to start the semester. Maybe didn't get the kind of cardiovascular workout that Delilah got, but equally busy, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. So that was a good introduction. A lot of basketball in a couple of days, but then as it rolled into, lacrosse and baseball, being able to see how each sport is different and, the amount of work that might go into the setup of one versus the other, as well as understanding who's around you, who you can kind of lean on for sport. You were always there, but working with other interns, it wasn't just myself. Obviously, there were other interns as well as game day staff. I know there's other administrators at Essex that help out. So just asking questions, I'll say that there's never a stupid question when you're learning how to support athletics. So Essex had a great support staff to get us both started.
All right. Well, I appreciate your answer as well. And we'll end it with, as far as that internship, I guess, is concerned, start with you, Taylor. What is one thing, if you had to do this internship over again when you were here, What is one thing that you would have done differently in your time at Essex, given all that's happened since?
Yeah, honestly, the one thing is I wish I would have started sooner. I started my last semester of college, and it wasn't until then that I realized, what junior college athletics was all about. My only experience prior to that was interning at Towson University, Division I program in the media relations department. So that's kind of night and day, going from a big Division I program to a, primarily Division II junior college. So I wish I would have started sooner to kind of get my feet wet in all areas, because that's kind of what junior college is all about. You're going to wear many hats, as people would say. That would be my biggest takeaway and biggest regret, I guess, is just that I didn't start sooner.
Delilah, same question for you.
Even though I did have the part-time job and the internship and I was relatively well-rounded, I think I would have tried to learn more things. I learned a lot, but when I was an intern, I mainly did the operations and stats. I didn't really work with the camera. I didn't work with prepping for game days the same way that Taylor did, which led to him being sports information. I think I would have tried to learn a little bit more on his side of things, not necessarily so like I could do the same stuff, but so I've got a better understanding of it, because I think it would have just made me a little bit more well-rounded in that aspect. And I would have tried to maybe work more closely with you or with Amy or with Greg, because what I'm doing now, I was prepared for, but working with the budget, working with scheduling is something that you don't really touch as an intern. And that's understandable, because those are both very important things that only certain people are allowed to touch. But I would have tried to get more experience with that as well. Because like he said, with athletics, with JUCO, you kind of have to be able to wear any hat at any time. And it would have been good to have tried on all the hats if I had the opportunity to do so.
Gotcha. Well, thank you both for your insight. Before I let you go, anything that either one of you want to add, whether questions, comments, anything about the game, just anything at all that we didn't discuss that you guys would like to add?
I'll go ahead and jump in. And Delilah kind of mentioned this earlier, how she kind of just rolled straight from, intern to part-time into the job that she has now. And, obviously COVID wasn't kind to all, but I got my opportunity at Prince George's through you, Rocco. It was through the internship program. Got my feet wet in junior college athletics. There's an opening within Maryland JUCO, and that's kind of how I got plugged in there. Started part-time. You kind of prove your worth, put the hours in, and hopefully it pays off. And for me, it did, and certainly for Delilah as well.
Delilah, anything to add?
I'd say kind of the same thing. I think I did almost double the amount of hours that were required for my internship. I didn't need to do that. It wasn't necessarily necessary, but it definitely helped me learn it all and learn how grueling that this can be sometimes when you've got those super long days and super long nights. And I mean, any future interns or current interns listening to this, connections is the thing that they tell you in all of your sport classes. And I personally was very worried about that. I'm not the biggest people person. So I was worried that I wouldn't be good at making connections or using those connections. But Rocco's the one that recommended me to my current boss, just because I was there and I worked hard and I tried to learn as quickly as I could. And if I messed up, I was harder on myself than anybody else was. So I think that's the thing, is you just gotta put yourself out there, just do your best, work hard, and then it doesn't always happen easily. COVID can mess things up, life can mess things up, but it works out as long as you're working for it.
Thank you both for the comments. I really appreciate it. And, of course, you guys know I try and stay in touch with as many former interns as possible. But just to piggyback on that, the two of you are two great examples of what we preach to the interns every semester, that, it's not feasible. It's not always within the realm of possibility to think that you're going to graduate with a degree in sport management and 2 months later you're making $40, $50, $60,000 a year, and that you have to do the grunt work. You have to pay your dues. And I don't know of any other interns. I mean, the two of you are probably in the top like half percentile of people that I've seen really take that to heart and do the part-time work and, work your way up. And I know Taylor was working, I think Taylor's worked for, 25% of the Maryland JUCO conference in one way, shape or form, whether part-time, contractual, game day, or what have you. Delilah certainly, paid her dues, was involved with some of the stuff that I did with the conference as the conference sports information director. And for those of you listening that are getting into this business or want to get into this business, those are the things you have to do. And I know these more and more the generations that are coming through college right now, more and more of them either still living at home post-grad or have, 2, 3, 4 different roommates. Now's the time to do that. Now's the time to do that grunt work while you can afford to do it. Pay your dues, make yourself known. And I mean, we have 2 great examples here, 2 former interns that are now working full-time in college athletics. So, appreciate what you guys did for us. And congratulations to you all, and hope you have continued success, whether at PG for many years to come or elsewhere.
Thank you, Rocco.
Yeah, thank you.
It's my pleasure. Well, there you have it, folks. A little bit of background information on the upcoming game for men's soccer, and a little trip down memory lane with 2 former Knights interns, Prince George's sports information specialist Taylor Moore and supervisor of intercollegiate athletic operations Delilah Glidden. Thank you both again for being on the program today. Very much appreciated, and had a good time catching up with both of you.
Thanks, Rocco. Should be a good game tomorrow.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. Well, Knights Nation, hang in there. We're going to take a quick 30-second commercial break here and hear a little word from CCBC, and we'll wrap things up when we return to the Kingdom Podcast, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics.
Let's talk about college. Times have changed. When it comes to realizing who I am and what I can be, I will not tie my dreams to somebody else's definition of success. I will not confuse a fancy name with a good education.
For all the practical thinkers, the achievers, the can't wait to get started types out there, your community college is waiting. Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online at ccbcmd.edu and see what you can be.
We are back here on the Kingdom Podcast, wrapping things up for this week's episode number 8 of season 4. And my thanks again to Taylor and Delilah for joining the show. Always good to catch up with them, and hopefully the Knights will come out on top in that game on Thursday, September 28th. Folks, listen, next week, your patience, I promise you, will be rewarded. I sat down earlier this week with head coach Mike Sini of the women's basketball team, and we taped our season preview. So tune in next week to learn so much more about the 2021-22 version of Knights women's basketball. Until then, remember to follow them on Twitter at Knights_WBB and on Instagram at CCBCEssex_WBB. Well, we have come to the end of our show. Special thanks one more time to Taylor Moore and Delilah Glidden of Prince George's Community College for joining the show. It was great to talk with them again, and make sure you continue to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CCBC Essex Sports. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube. Keyword search CCBC Essex Athletics. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page so you can be notified of all of our new content and live streams when they air. Our website, ccbcessexknights.com, and all of our team handles are in the episode description. It has been a blast. Again, thank you for joining us, folks. And until next time, take care and be well. Bye-bye.